Walker, known as Stretch, was a member of the group Live Squad. Police say Walker was driving in Hollis, Queens overnight on his way home from his brother's house when someone in a passing car shot at him at least 3 times, causing him to crash his van.
And did Tupac go to Stretch's funeral?
No.
Once I lost my brother, man, it was like, I'm just like, where the is everybody at?
And you're like, Stretch and Pac was like this. Where did it go left? How did that relationship break down?
After the quad shooting.
And the reason I knew my homeboys set me up is because my homeboys knew I was strapped. The dudes came straight for me. My homeboys is behind. It's like they running for the swag. My homeboys behind and they didn't do nothing. They did was grab the and I could have bust. But they got guns, so these are coming for me and these just sitting there. And they say get, and they just dropped to the floor. I knew it was a setup.
On November 30th, 1994, Tupac was shot at Quad Studios in a moment that changed hip-hop forever. Exactly 1 year later, on the same day in 1995, Stretch, one of Tupac's closest friends, was off in his hometown after being chased down and shot by 2 perpetrators in a car.
Walker, known as Stretch, was a member of the group Live Squad. Walker was only about 3 blocks away from his home right here. He didn't make it, and his family doesn't know why.
Was this a coincidence, or was this a revenge hit connected to Tupac? Well, that question seemed to be answered when neither Tupac nor other big-name rappers showed up to Stretch's funeral.
I'm like, my mom's like, yo, is Pac coming to the funeral? Is Big calling? Like, yo, it's real, man. You're Big, you know what I'm saying? And Big ain't come to the funeral.
Stretch ain't have nothing to do with what happened to you in a Quad studio. That was your man. You could have showed up at his funeral. You should have showed up and just paid your respects. Or even if you wasn't coming, you could have sent something.
The reality was that nobody wanted to be associated with Stretch after his death because his name had become too controversial. There were rumors that Stretch might have been involved in Tupac's shooting at Quad Studios. Some even claimed he was caught talking disrespectfully about Tupac, saying Tupac shot himself during the incident. Showing up at his funeral could have painted you as an enemy of Tupac.
It's an audio, man. It's an audio that's been online for a few years now, a Stretch. And, you know, he talking a little spicy about Pac, man, getting shot at Quad.
I'm going to give him a chance to tell the world what he did to his mother.
So they try to say he shot himself?
You hear that, man? You hear the hate and disdain in his voice, yo?
On the flip side, if you were part of the East Coast scene or aligned with Biggie's crew, who were rumored to have ties to Tupac's shooting, attending Stretch's funeral might have raised suspicions about where your loyalties lay. It was a no-win situation, and being tied to Stretch became a dangerous game. But was Stretch really connected to Tupac's shooting? Let's dig deeper. Stretch and Tupac weren't just friends. They were practically brothers. The two collaborated on several tracks together and their bond seemed unshakable. But everything changed after that fateful day in 1994 when Tupac was shot at Quad Studios. From that point on, their relationship soured, and it became clear that Tupac believed Stretch had some kind of involvement in the shooting.
And you're like, Stretch and Pac was like this. Where did it go left? How did that relationship break down?
After the quad shooting.
Why did Tupac think this? A big reason was that Stretch had connections to the people allegedly behind the incident. Being from Queens, Stretch was familiar with Haitian Jack and Jimmy Henchman, 2 notorious figures in the New York underworld. On the night of the shooting, Stretch was right there with Tupac when everything went down. But what didn't sit right with Tupac was the fact that he was the only one targeted. Stretch, a towering figure at 6'8", and the reason for his nickname, should have logically been the biggest threat to the gunman. Yet, they didn't even try to touch him. This raised red flags for Tupac. In an interview with Vibe magazine, Tupac shared his confusion and suspicion, saying, "I was like, what should I do? I'm thinking Stretch is going to fight. He was towering over those From what I know about the criminal element, if come to rob you, they always hit the big first. But they didn't touch Stretch. They came straight to me. Everybody dropped to the floor like potatoes, but I just froze up. It wasn't like I was being brave or nothing. I just could not get on the floor." Pac also said this.
And the reason I knew my homeboys set me up is because my homeboys knew I was strapped. The dudes came straight for me. My homeboys is behind. It's like they running for the swag. My homeboys behind and they didn't do nothing. They did was grab the and I could have bust. But they got guns, so these niggas are coming for me and these niggas just sitting there. And they say get, and they just drop to the floor. I knew it was a setup.
The situation became even more questionable when Stretch passed on messages to Tupac from Jimmy Henchman while Tupac was recovering from the shooting. That's when Tupac's suspicions solidified. He started believing Stretch might have played a role in setting him up.
When he came and said, Jimmy Henchman, I remember like yesterday, Jimmy Henchman said, you don't want to go to war because you don't got your money right. And I'm looking like him. I'm the only one that said, how do a friend bring this message to a friend? Like, you know what I mean? So that felt awkward to me. Like,
adding to the suspicion, Tupac had been brought to Quad Studios under the pretense of working with Lil Sean, an artist managed by none other than Jimmy Henchman. Jimmy was well known as both a music manager and a feared gangster, someone who had influence both in the industry and on the streets. Tupac later opened up about why he even went to Quad Studios that night, and it's clear he had reservations from the start. He admitted that he was suspicious of Jimmy Henchman, saying, I met him through some rough characters I knew. He was trying to get legitimate and all that, so I thought I was doing him a favor. But when I called him back for directions, he was like, I don't have the money. So I said, if you don't have the money, I'm not coming. Normally, Tupac wasn't the type to charge people he felt he was helping, especially other black artists. He had a strong desire to uplift his people and help them get ahead in life. But this time, he decided to charge Henchman because he felt something was off. Pac continued. He hung up the phone and then called me back saying, I'm going to call Andre Harrell to make sure you get the money, but I'm going to give you the money out of my pocket. So I said, all right, I'm on my way. Tupac recalled that as they approached the studio, someone called down from above. It was Lil Cease, one of Biggie's close friends. Pac said, that's my homeboy. As soon as I saw him, all my concerns about the situation were relaxed. But looking back, it's clear that Tupac had been lured there under false pretenses. He was the target, and whoever planned this knew exactly where he was going to be.
It's December 1st, 1994. The rare, raw footage of Tupac Shakur in a wheelchair the morning after he was shot.
The incident was initially classed as a robbery, but things didn't add up. Haitian Jack, someone Tupac had publicly disrespected in a Daily News article, hinted that the attack was about revenge. Pac had referred to Jack as a hanger-on. This was a bold move, especially in New York, where Jack and his associates were considered to have significant street influence. In an interview with Ice-T, Jack claimed that one of his associates decided Tupac needed to be disciplined. However, Jack admitted that the plan went wrong and later received a call from the associate, informing him about it.
I got the call within 30 seconds after it happened. He said, listen, man, I got it, homie. And it went all bad.
So someone called you up, I assume you know who it was because you answered, and they said that the job went bad.
They said, listen, I got that dude. Remember I told everybody not to get at him.
Somebody got at him.
While Jack didn't name the person, many believe he was referring to Jimmy Henchman. It's highly likely that Tupac was set up. Still, some argue that this doesn't necessarily mean Stretch was involved, nor did it mean Puffy or Biggie, who Tupac also accused later on, had anything to do with it. At the time, though, Tupac was understandably paranoid. He was recovering from multiple gunshot wounds and trying to piece together what had happened. In his Vibe interview with Kevin Powell, Tupac described the mental toll it took on him. Yes, I have headaches. I wake up screaming. I've been having nightmares thinking they're still shooting me. All I see is pulling guns, and I hear the dude saying, shoot that mother effer, and I'll be like, damn, I have a headache. He later shared that a psychiatrist at Bellevue Hospital told him he was experiencing post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. One thing that stuck with Tupac was how the other guys with him that night had just dropped to the floor. He said it hurt him to see them do that while he froze in place, but in fairness, they were unarmed and had guns pointed at them. What could they have realistically done? In a 2005 Vibe interview, Jimmy Henchman opened up about the infamous shooting at Quad Studios, claiming to have had a candid conversation with Tupac after the incident. According to Jimmy, he told Pac, nobody came to rob you. They came to discipline you, and that's what happened. This statement reinforced suspicions that the attack was far from a random robbery. It was targeted and calculated. As for Stretch, his relationship with Tupac never recovered after the shooting. Stretch had been a constant presence in Pac's life, even collaborating with him on tracks like Many Tears. However, by the time Tupac's landmark third album, All Eyes on Me, was released, Stretch's contributions had been completely removed. This was a clear sign of the growing divide between the two former friends. Stretch himself spoke about the fallout in his own Vibe interview, expressing confusion and frustration over Tupac's Accusations. He said, "Me and Pac have been down from day one. Before he did Juice, before his first album. That's my man, so the interview he did in Vibe bugged me out, but I know him. He likes to talk a lot. Especially when he's upset, he'll say shh that he won't even mean. And then he'll think about it later and be like, damn, why the F did I say that?" Stretch also took issue with Tupac airing their issues publicly, saying, "In that interview, Pac was talking all that shit about thug life being ignorance and telling ninjas names and all that. I don't even understand why he went there. I've seen Pac mad times after the shooting, and he never kicked none of that shit to me. You know how he feels about the media, so why would he go and do an interview like that? He's supposed to be a street ninja. He should have kept it in the street. Ninjas on the street live by rules, man. And that rule right there, that's a rule that's never to be broken." Tupac's comments about Stretch not stepping up during the attack also struck a nerve. Pac had said he expected Stretch, who stood at 6'8" and towered over everyone, to fight back. Stretch responded, Pac saying all this shush in the interview like, "I thought Stretch was gonna fight. He was towering over them." Now that dude knows I ain't never gonna be out like no B, but I ain't dumb. I ain't got no gun. What the F am I supposed to do? I might be towering over them, but I ain't towering over no slugs. Unfortunately, just 4 months after that interview, Stretch was offed in a drive-by shooting in Queens. His death only deepened the mystery and speculation surrounding his alleged involvement in the Quad Studios incident. Many believe Stretch was unfairly blamed. Several people, including Napoleon from the Outlaws, Nas and Zayd, Tupac's sister's boyfriend, have come to Stretch's defense over the years. Zayd, who was also at the studio that night, insisted Stretch had nothing to do with the setup and felt it was wrong for Tupac to criticize them for dropping to the floor during the attack. After all, they were unarmed and outnumbered. What else could they have done? The general consensus now is that Jimmy Henchman was the mastermind behind the shooting. Over the years, Henchman's reputation has only solidified his alleged involvement. He was a known figure in both the music industry and the streets, often walking a fine line between legitimacy and crime. Currently, Henchman is serving a life sentence plus 20 years for charges including drug trafficking, conspiracy to emder, and emder for hire. Exactly a year to the day after the Quad Studios shooting, almost to the minute, Stretch was tragically offed. That night, he was chased by 2 men in a car.
Walker, known as Stretch, was a member of the group Live Squad. Police say Walker was driving in Hollis, Queens overnight on his way home from his brother's house when someone in a passing car shot at him at least 3 times, causing him to crash his van.
After a high-speed pursuit, Stretch was shot and his car crashed into a tree. Earlier in the evening, Stretch had been giving people rides. He had just dropped off his brother and, according to Nas, had even given him a ride as well. Unfortunately, that kindness would be one of his last acts. Stretch's death left his family devastated, including his mother, siblings, and his young daughter, who at the time was also Tupac's goddaughter. Stretch's mother later spoke about the tragedy, saying, "He never talked to me about having enemies. My son was a very loving, kind person. I don't know why they did this to him."
I don't know if people think that he was moving up too fast. I don't know.
And maybe a little jealous of his success.
Yeah, I get a hug from him every day. Every day. He calls me mother.
When Tupac was asked about Stretch's emder, his response was surprisingly cold, given how close they had once been. In an interview with The Source, Tupac said, "Stretch was my closest dog, my closest homie. I did a lot of drama. I got into a lot of cases in Sha because of Stretch. Money-wise, he could have had anything. His daughter was my daughter. Whatever she wanted, she could have. Then this shit happened, and the ninja didn't ride for me. He didn't do what your dog is supposed to do when you're shot up. When I was in jail, Ninja never wrote me, never got at me. His homeboys were coming to see me, and he wasn't coming to see me. And he started hanging around Biggie right after this. I'm in jail, shot up, his main dog, and he's hanging out, going to shows with Biggie. Both these ninjas never came to see me." However, others who knew Stretch, like Ed Lover, have pushed back against Tupac's perspective. Ed explained that Stretch couldn't visit Tupac in jail because he didn't have a valid ID due to being a convicted felon, something Pac may not have taken into account.
Pac felt the way because he said, that Stretch and Madge and them didn't come see him when he was locked up. But they couldn't come see him because you had to have ID.
Ed also criticized Tupac for expecting Stretch to pick sides between him and Biggie, pointing out that the three of them had all been friends. According to Ed, Tupac knew who was really behind the Quad Studios attack and that Biggie wasn't involved. Asking Stretch to cut ties with Biggie over Tupac's paranoia wasn't fair and put Stretch in an impossible position.
They were friends. The friendship and that bond was B.I., God rest his soul, Stretch, and Pac. They were all cool, bro. So you can't ask somebody to pick a side when you know that what happened to you did not come from that person. So you ask the Stretch to choose a side, and he's like, you my man, and he's my man. You know where this came from. You know who you was messing with that we kept telling you not to mess with. So you know where it came from, bro.
Ed Lover also revealed that he started having problems with Tupac over how he handled Stretch's death. He was particularly upset that Tupac didn't show up to Stretch's funeral. As Stretch's daughter's godfather, Ed felt Tupac should have at least paid his respects or sent condolences to Stretch's family. In Ed's words, no matter what had happened, he should have shown some respect.
And did Tupac go to Stretch's funeral?
No, and that's when him and I had a problem. Because we are both godfathers to his daughter. Stretch ain't have nothing to do with what happened to you in a Quad studio. That was your man. You could have showed up at his funeral. You should have showed up and just paid your respects. Or even if you wasn't coming, you could have sent something.
Even years later, Stretch's M-dur remains a topic of debate. For example, Reggie Wright Jr. has hinted that Stretch's K-ing may have been a revenge hit tied to Tupac. He pointed to the timing, exactly a year after the Quad Studios shooting, and suggested there may have been more to the story. Reggie also claimed that Tupac was seen hugging someone in the studio who was rumored to be involved in sketchy activities.
Number one, it happened on the anniversary date of the shooting incident at the Quad Studios with Tupac. An associate of ours was out there. He came back a day or two later. Pac hugged him like he was Kadada. That's all I'll say.
While a hug doesn't prove anything, some believe Reggie was trying to say more than he let on. Despite the speculation, there's no solid evidence linking Tupac to Stretch's death, and the case remains unsolved. Before his tragic death, Stretch managed to make a name for himself in the hip-hop industry. In the late 1980s, Stretch, alongside his brother Christopher, known as Majesty, and DJ Kalo, formed the group Live Squad. The group blended rapping and producing, and in 1988, they dropped their debut EP BQ in Full Effect. The project featured tracks like Troopin' It and We Ain't Havin' It, showcasing Stretch's distinctively deep, raspy voice that became his trademark. Stretch's talent caught attention early on. In 1990, he connected with Shock G of Digital Underground, a pivotal relationship that helped push him further into the scene. Stretch featured on Digital Underground's 1991 album on the track Family of the Underground, and even remixed their single No Nose Job. That same summer, Stretch's path crossed with Tupac Shakur, marking the start of a powerful friendship and creative partnership. Tupac, who was still rising in the game, quickly became close with Stretch. Their chemistry was undeniable, and Stretch's connections helped Tupac land TV appearances and studio sessions. For example, when Tupac performed his 1992 single If My Homie Calls on Yo MTV Raps, Stretch had his back. Ed Lover, a host of the show and a supporter of Live Squad, praised the group's demo tape, which helped them secure a deal with Tommy Boy Records. By the early 90s, Live Squad had started making waves. In 1992, they released a double A-side single, M. Dara, Heartless, followed by another release, Game of Survival, Pump for a Livin' in 1993. They even went the extra mile to create an ultra-violent promo short film, Game of Survival, which featured 6 tracks from their upcoming album. Stretch's influence wasn't just limited to music. He also appeared in movies like Who's the Man? 1993, and Tupac's Bullet, 1996. During this time, Stretch and Tupac's bond grew stronger. While Tupac was filming his breakout movie Juice, Stretch and Tretch from Naughty by Nature were extras on set. When Tupac's trailer was robbed, Stretch and Tretch didn't hesitate to handle the situation, delivering a beatdown to the culprits. Stretch's contributions to Tupac's music are undeniable. He worked on Pac's debut album, Tupac Lips Now, in 1991, produced producing and rapping on tracks like Crooked Ass Ninja, while Tupac's star power was still building at the time. The release of Juice in 1992 helped boost his career. Stretch continued collaborating with Tupac on his second album, Strictly For My in 1993. Live Squad produced and were featured on Strugglin' and collaborated on the iconic track Five Deadly Venoms alongside Tretch and Apache. Stretch also produced two other notable tracks, The Streets Are Death Row and Holler If You Hear Me, which further showcased his versatility as a producer and artist. Stretch wasn't just behind the scenes though. He made cameo appearances in music videos like Mac Mall's Ghetto Theme, which was directed by Tupac, and the collaborative track Call It What You Want featuring Above the Law, Money B, and Tupac. He even joined Tupac on the Arsenio Hall show in 1994 to perform Pain, a track from the Above the Rim soundtrack. Although Pain was only available on the cassette version and as a B-side single, it quickly became a fan favorite and solidified Stretch's place in the rap world. Sadly, Stretch's life was cut short before he could fully realize his potential. Despite this, his contributions to hip-hop remain significant.